Welcome back to the Real News Network. We've been speaking about this week's Senate confirmation hearings for Trump's Supreme Court nominee, Neil Gorsuch. And we're here discussing this with Glen Ford. Glen is joining us from Plainfield, New Jersey. He is the co-founder and executive editor of the Black Agenda Report and the author of The Big Lie, an analysis of the U.S. media coverage of the Grenada invasion. And of course, he's a regular contributor to the Real News Network. Thanks for coming back with me, Glen.
Thanks for having me.
So, Glen, we left off speaking about Neil Gorsuch's record on civil rights, but can we talk about how important it is who's in the Supreme Court in terms of defending democratic gains?
Well, we have to start off with the obvious, and that is that the Supreme Court is a lifetime job. And so if you're appointed when you're in your 50s, you may be there 30 or even 40 years into the future. So you don't get more longevity than that. But I think that there's an overemphasis on the differences between your usual Supreme Court appointees, whether they be Democrat or Republican, or at least the way things used to be. And there's not enough specific attention played to the role that the Federalists have played and have really changed the game. There is no liberal or leftish equivalent to the Federalist Society. That is we have to go back to Thurgood Marshall, who was a premier civil rights attorney, who saw the world in civil rights terms and a liberal interpretation of the Constitution. To see anything equivalent on the right to the Federalist, on the left, to the Federalist Society, which is a group of lawyers who constantly speak of how this originalist philosophy can be applied to existing legislation that is proposed to become law and to existing laws and the different challenges to the law. So you have an organized right wing made up of lawyers and judges in this country who now exercise a kind of veto power and when Republicans are in control, who bring with them a very well-organized, well-thought-out strategic view of how they're going to reshape the country through their interpretation of the Constitution. And there's nothing like that coming from the Democratic side, so that we see Barack Obama's attempt to appoint a successor to Scalia was, in political terms, nothing much from a liberal or a progressive point of view. And yet there was very little complaint from Democratic and from progressive circles when he made that appointment. And yet the Republicans can be counted on to bring forward candidates and appointees to the Supreme Court who can really make some fundamental changes in the way the law works in the United States. There's nothing like that on the left.
And Senate Democrats are actually considering filibustering Trump's Supreme Court nominee. And if they do so, Trump has urged Republican senators to invoke the so-called nuclear option, where they basically override a rule or precedent by a simple majority of 51 votes instead of by a supermajority of 60 votes. So what would the significance of that be?
Well, the Democrats are calling that blowing up the Congress, but we know from history that the Republicans are the ones who are much more likely to light the match than the Democrats, who really don't like excitement. They don't like drama. They're scared of any kind of change. The Republicans are not so reticent.
Thanks so much for joining us, Glen, and we hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks you for having me.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.